When anxiety is high, certainty is low, nobody's buying anything. Now, with that framework in mind, with that mindset, that our job is to, again, lower anxiety, increase certainty, the question then becomes, well, how do you do that, Victor? And how do you do it easily? So step number one in any engagement is to first empathize. Let's just call it empathy. Let's talk about empathize with your customer. Now, what does that mean, empathize with your customer? When you meet somebody for the first time, who are you talking to? Now, there's 4 types, and I use an acronym to identify the person I'm talking to, because once I identify who I'm talking to, I can adjust my conversation style to that person's personality. Now, this is my version of a personality profile. I have an acronym called SAAD. SAD, right? There's 4 types of people that you're going to meet. The first one is a very social person. This is a person that walks in and they just talk. They just love talking. These are people who are easy to engage with, right? Very social, very how you doing, very open, very forthright. Again, the conversation just flows easily. Let's move over to the more difficult one. This one right here, I call this one amiable, right? Now, an amiable person, my wife is a perfect example of amiable, very polite, very conscientious, likes to ask a lot of questions, right? This type of person asks a lot of questions and is looking for you to provide very in-depth answers. In other words, when they ask you a question, they're also monitoring how you're responding to their questions. This one right here, this one's a very analytical person. Analytical people, they slice and dice. By that I mean is they've done a lot of research and they're going to ask you very technical questions, right? And we'll get into the whole answering questions, but they're going to ask you technical questions. They're going to analyze it almost from the left brain, so to speak, very logical in how they're approaching it. So they'll look at price, they'll look at the type of product they're buying, right? Different categories of diamonds, for example. With this type of person, you can't try to be too social because they're and they mean business. They're very, again, left brain, very logical. So with these people, you want to be very specific. In other words, you want to give them the information they're asking you about. Our outline. Okay? So this one right here, this is a dominating personality. By dominating means they know what they want. They've come into the store and they like to dominate the conversation. Why? Because they've done the research, they know what they want, they just want you to answer specific questions. And again, when you're dealing with a dominant personality, the best way is to obviously be a good listener, but also ask questions. So in other words, they're going to want to dominate the conversation. Instead of trying to correct them, right? What you want to do is ask questions to guide them, to help them clarify their thoughts.